So Judy, thank you for coming on and being interviewed today. Appreciate it. I I know that some in the federal courts have had experience with you in the past, know you in the past, but I would guess that a lot of the Omaha Bar Association members um, don't know much about you and your position and the work you've done. And could I ask you to give a little background on what you do and what you have done in the past? It's an
Okay.
open-ended statement there, right?
That's a lot. I don't think we have enough time, but I've been the executive director here for 25 years, and I'm not an appointee. So I have worked with Governor Ben Nelson, and then Governor Mike Johans, and Governor Dave Heineman, and Governor Pete Ricketts. And some of those gentlemen have become United States senators. So I've worked with them as well. And my position is to be the liaison between state, federal, and tribal governments. So towards that end, I have tried to facilitate dialogues, kind of be the person behind the scenes often, so that you don't always know what I'm doing. And that's maybe how more can be done. More effective when you're not out there so obviously. So I have worked on a variety of legislative bills over the years, advocating for the tribes, whatever that happened to be, whether it was the Indian Child Welfare Act, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. One of my key responsibilities as a director statutorily is to be responsible for the return of human remains. So that's a unique goal or a unique job responsibility that our agency has, that other non-code, we're a non-code state agency. Others don't have that responsibility. And I find it to be a sacred responsibility that I have been honored to participate in. And actually next week, we're going to be returning the last of the Pawnee unaffiliated human remains to Western Nebraska at Dannebrog, where Roger Welch has donated land for that purpose. So our state was the first state in the United States that had a bill to protect human remains. And then the federal law became effective, the NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. And actually, before I became the director of the Indian Commission, I worked for the Ponca tribe. I'm a member of the Ponca tribe, and I'm Santee Sioux. So our tribe was restored in 1990 without a reservation, and we have service areas. So one of the, my job working for the tribe was to be the first NAGPRA representative. So I was involved in contentious litigation with the University of Nebraska, who had human remains there that fell under federal law. And so it kind of is a full circle 25 years later that we are getting those Pawnee remains back. And it was the battle with the Pawnees that started this state legislation in Nebraska. So that's an example of something that I've worked on. Some other things that I've worked on, I've tried to help educate the state, non-Indian and Indian people as well, on stories that most people weren't familiar with because they weren't taught in our schools. And so to tell the heroes, stories about, you know, those unsung heroes. And we started, I started doing that in 2005, I believe, working on the Standing Bear, Chief Standing Bear of the Ponca tribe in the 1879 trial. And the courts in Omaha were involved in that. So that was something that layer upon layer upon layer, it brought us to finally where we, our state decided to recognize Standing Bear on Centennial Mall. So I had a friend who made that gift, and then we had a bill that followed that, that took LB 807, the state, Nebraska, again being a first. We are the first state to replace both of our sculptures in the U.S. Capitol. So LB 807 started out with Willa Cather, and then we amended it to add Standing Bear. So I worked with this committee in the legislature, and now Standing Bear is in the United States Capitol. And most recently, we have worked with the state. Again, I had a donor, a friend here in Lincoln, Larry Small. He was really a big supporter of the Standing Bear story and thought it was so important. Well, there's another great story in Nebraska about America's first Native doctor, and that is Dr. Susan LaFleche Picot from the Omaha tribe. Her sister was the interpreter for the trial of Standing Bear, Suzette LaFleche Tibbles. And Suzette is in the Nebraska Hall of Fame, along with Standing Bear and Red Cloud. So now we will be unveiling Dr. Susan LaFleche Picot on Indigenous Peoples Day, our first inaugural celebration next October 11th on Centennial Mall. So that was another bill that I worked on, and we will, for the first time, be bringing the tribal flags into the state capitol. That was part of the package of bills that I worked on with the legislature. So the state will learn the story of America's first doctor. We also, as an agency, are working to restore her hospital that she built in 1913, 2 years before she died in 1915. At that time, she was a citizen of the Omaha Nation. She was a tribal person, but we as Indian people were not citizens until the Citizenship Act of 1924. And that's probably a truth and something that most Nebraskans don't know. So every day is a day to be a champion for justice here at the Indian Commission. And I continue to really enjoy what I do. And I believe that we have done a lot of good things with the help of so many wonderful people, such as Judge Laurie Smith Camp and the courts. We have a lot of friends and allies that also embrace the good work we do. It's not always easy, and we don't always succeed, but I guess that's kind of the long and short of it.
Well, and you know, to coordinate between state governments and federal governments and tribal governments, I mean, you are coordinating, you are spinning a lot of plates at one time. You are coordinating across some very large, demanding entities here to get things done. I mean, that does take a certain personality, a person that's okay being maybe in the background a little bit to spread the wealth to everybody else to get things done. You know, are there any? Do you have any war stories that you can tell? Maybe you can. You know, about process and how you got something through, and you know, just working together that you have to do in your job to get things going.
More stories. My telephone was just ringing. I don't know if you heard it. Did you hear it? The dial?
Oh yeah.
Well, I have calls. People, this person lives in Pennsylvania, and he's been calling me and writing me letters weekly for 4 years. And he has some serious mental health challenges. And he believes that people in Nebraska, tribal people, are trying to kill him. And I really have no authority or any way to help him, and he's not tribal himself. So that's something that I have to deal with. That's kind of just concerning with what's going on in America. Whenever I hear the news, I wonder, could it be this person going to DC to do harm to someone because he's hearing voices? And as the director, I have to try to disengage and go home and find a way not to think about that. But, you know, in the battles that I've dealt with over the years, one was on the human remains, and I was threatened by a lawsuit by someone, and I'm not protected right now by sovereign immunity. So all your judges and attorneys know I don't work for my tribe. And when this happened, I was protected by sovereign immunity. So I was sued for my life earnings for slander. And at that time, my daughters were young girls. I was a single mother, and I was very scared. But thank goodness I had my hero, Robert Paragoy, who worked on the human remains bill here in Nebraska for the Native American Rights Fund in the Pawnee. He took my case, and I prevailed and I was protected. So that's a battle that you often learn more by those kinds of scary things that happen. And, you learn how to go forward and not be bullied and intimidated. So even though I am a woman, I feel like I'm a very strong person. And I come from a line of great female role models. My mother was on the Ponca Tribal Council. She went to the Genoa Indian School, where the motto was kill the Indian, save the man. And I recently have worked on a project to digitize all of those records, working with Dr. Margaret Jacobs at the University of Nebraska. So that's really a personally gratifying project to be able to tell what happened when they tried to do that to our people. And it was a failed experiment. It wasn't successful. And there are, long-term ramifications from that. But what I've tried to do is, as I approach my work, mentoring young people through a variety of our scholarships that we award here through our Standing Bear Scholarship and the tribal license plate that we have raised over $60,000 from that tribal license plate. And this year we are awarding $5,000 scholarships. So what I hope that our young people learn from is how to seek the truth and not be re-victimized by the past, and move forward with honesty and integrity to honor our ancestors who sacrificed so much for us that we could be here today. And I feel like our agency and my board of directors supports the good work that we've done. And I think there really has been, thinking back 25 years ago to today, there are so many Native American professional people in our state. So many great things happening with Ho Chunk Inc., Lance Morgan, all they're doing. The Ponca tribe has quite a footprint in Nebraska. The Santee Sioux has a beautiful golf course. Lots of good things. We have many more battles to fight to have health equity during COVID times. Native people suffered at the highest rate, and the data shows from DHHS that we suffer, we're at the highest rate for all health disparities, whether diabetes, heart disease. And, in prisons, we're incarcerated more, and our women are sexually assaulted and missing and murdered. So that's still a lot more that we can do. But being visible as a people here in Nebraska, that everybody understands that we aren't leaving. This is our homeland. We love it. And we're like rural Nebraskans who live on farms. They're not going anywhere, and we're not going anywhere. So
You mentioned women being victimized, and we did the Power Act CLE last year to talk about that issue, and it's still out there for OBA members and attorneys to watch. But the education of understanding the issues involved here and the need for attorneys to assist when they can in those situations. I mean, there is still a very large unmet need for legal assistance for victims of domestic abuse and violence, right, on the tribal lands.
absolutely. I think a lot of the reason why we have so many people of color and Native people in prisons is because they don't have the wealth, the access to an attorney. And so without that, they accept plea bargains and do things that, get them in the system. And it's hard to get out of the system once you get in the system. So we get a lot of requests here at our agency for people needing legal counsel, and we are really a staff of 3, myself and 2 others, and a small budget. I'm not an attorney, my daughter is, but she lives in DC. So we have to try to find other resources. So the Powers Act was something that is one of those good things that we hope we can find people that will step up to the plate and look out for the rights of women and children and people that are not being given that opportunity.
Absolutely. And you talked about the Chief Standing Bearer statute, and there's a great video that you sent me. I think it may be on NET, if you search on NET, where it talks about that history of getting the statute into Statutory Hall, and Judge Laurie Smith Camp is in there, looking at the sculpture when I think it was in production, and when it was being looked at as the potential final product and everything like that. And she really told that story a lot of times. I know that she did a bunch of presentations to talk about the Chief Standing Bearer trial, and I know it was important to her. And so I'm it's great that you have that connection with her. It was a pretty powerful experience for her, as she told it to me. So
yes, she was really, we were so blessed that she came to all of our breakfasts almost from the beginning, and she would, I would tell her who she would be introducing, the keynote speaker, and she took it upon herself with her busy workload to always read the books of the person, and she came prepared. She was that kind of a person that did her homework, and I never had to worry one iota whether she would deliver, because she was flawless. She was elegant. She was so such a presence, and it just elevated the whole event. And she did so many things around the Standing Bear that because she believed in the story, she was moved by the story. And then also she was moved by other stories like the Dr. Susan and the missing and murdered women. She always found, what I thought about Laurie was that she was an interesting person because she was interested in learning. And she was brilliant, but she never thought she knew everything. And she treated everybody with dignity. And all people were blessed by her presence because she supported inclusion. And I believe that's why she was such an amazing judge, because she executed in her decisions a mind that was open to fairness and the truth. And you didn't have to worry about a bias. And she just lived a life that was one that I aspire to be like. And I liken her to be like Standing Bear strong. She did the right thing and not for any personal gratification. As Standing Bear came back to honor his son's dying wish to be buried in Nebraska, not to be in a courtroom and become famous. That was the circumstance. And when I started to work with Laurie here in the Capitol, here she worked for the AG, we flew out to Western Nebraska to meet on matters concerning white clay in a tiny little plane. So there were others in the plane with us, Ken Van Polen, Christine, let's see, what was her, just slipped. She was the head of DHHS. And some of the people were busy reading and taking naps, but not Laurie. She wanted to know all the way there what was going to be happening and who the people we were meeting with. She was preparing herself. And so that was my kind of first introduction to how amazing she was. And when we went to DC to celebrate the Ponca tribe, she played a key role there in getting us access to Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And that was, really a real treat, and talk about elevating the event. And then when the justice came, we got to dance with her, do the traditional Indian round dance. We were told she wasn't going to take many pictures, but she stayed and took pictures with all of us. That was Laurie's magic touch. She kind of did things too sometimes behind the scenes. She was always helping people, and I know she mentored a lot of young attorneys, and she was a very strong advocate for women's rights to vote and I could relate to her on a lot of that and appreciated that part of who she was. So she
Absolutely.
was a first, just like Dr. Susan was a first. And when you're a first, you don't have anybody to model. You just have to blaze the trail. And she did that with such fierceness and elegance, but a calmness and without meanness. She was amazing.
Absolutely. One thing that you mentioned there, and I think it is such an important legacy, and it's one that you focused on as well, is mentoring. And people have certain ideas of what mentoring is, but it can be so many different actions that you do for other people, and what other people take from what you do. But what something formal that you've been doing is scholarship program, and the I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to get the name wrong. A youth program that you do each year.
The Native American Youth Leadership Academy.
Yeah, can you
Yes.
talk a bit about that?
Sure. We started that about 9 years ago with the grant from DHHS, and that was a monthly event, and that became a little bit too much for our staff of 3. So we went to an annual camp, and we partnered with the Mid-American Transportation Center here at MATSE, it's called. Dr. Larry Willett is the director, and we have support from Dr. Ann Hubbard. She's contributed to the camp. So every summer we bring in, it can range from 30 to 40 tribal students, high school students from the reservations, from the urban areas as well. And the goal is to help those kids have access to what it's like to be on a campus and to have dreams and to think, I could go to the university. It's focused STEM, but I like to say STEAM, arts and science and math. The kids are introduced to a lot of Native role models, leaders, whether that's Senator Tom Brewer, our first Native senator, or young professional people, Native attorneys and others. Because to be it, you have to see it. We believe our advisors in camp people are mostly all natives involved. And so that's something we do each summer. With COVID, that's kind of put a little bit of a glitch in it. But we do believe that we're really building future leaders. And those kids, some of them come back multiple years. Once they come, they like it. And our last camp, every student went home with a bicycle that was donated from the bike kitchen. A couple of the boys didn't know how to ride a bike. They played basketball. One of them was from Winnebago. And the first lady hosted a luncheon over at the mansion. And she sat at the table with one of these young 6'4" lads that said he didn't know how to ride a bicycle, but he had ridden it. And she was so amazed that he didn't have a bike, that he didn't know how to ride a bicycle. But he got to keep that bicycle and helmet and lock. And that's really rewarding to do that. And it's a lot of work, but when it's over with, you always feel like it was all worth it. And some of those kids go on. Some of them, we have one young man who's going to work for a federal judge down in Arizona, Alexander Mallory, who was a page here at the legislature, and he's from the Winnebago tribe. And so over the years, we've mentored him. And it's just really so gratifying and rewarding to see that you can make a difference in somebody's trajectory in life. And I think that's what Laurie did. She did things that made people feel special at something. She would help open doors or make introductions, and she would maybe write you a note. I think things that it really kind of made you feel like special.